Fallen, fallen is Babylon. We are moving into another section of Isaiah. Isaiah 1 through 12 form a section. Now, there are subsections to it, but it forms a big unit. And we are entering into a section that goes 13 to 39, and then you'll remember from last year, 40 through 66 is the section. As we begin this section, 13 through 27 forms a subunit of 13 to 39. And what we have are two main sections, and one has to do with judgments against the nations, which we're going to deal with one case from that. And then next week, we're going to deal with sections 24 through 27, which the Bible Project labeled A Tale of Two Cities, and so I've followed their title, and we'll see where Isaiah is taking us in that section. One of the characteristics is the key word oracle, and I've just listed the times that it occurs in this section. And the word oracle, what does the word oracle mean?
A wise saying.
Okay.
From God to human,
Okay, pronouncement's a good synonym, I think. Many of your translations will put in the margin burden. I think thinking of pronouncement maybe is better, but an oracle is a pronouncement that comes from God, and it's usually about judgment. So this is a judgment section that we're entering into, and you can see, who are the people that are being talked about? Babylon, Moab, Damascus, Egypt, Duma, Arabia, Tyre. It starts with Babylon, and why is Babylon significant? It takes the southern kingdom into captivity, right? They're the big enemy, ultimately. Assyria is the other big enemy. As we see, Assyria besieged Jerusalem in 701 BC, and it was only by God's intervention that the siege was broken. And so we see these big enemies. And I think one of the messages we get is God judges the nations in history. And that's an interesting thing to ponder. I think as we look at modern times, I don't have a prophet like Isaiah saying to me, this is that. This is God's judgment on this nation. I don't have that. And so, speculating is maybe dangerous. But we do see God is concerned about how nations behave. Let's read the first 6 verses of chapter 13. The oracle concerning Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz beheld. Lift up a standard on the bare hill. Heighten your voice at them. Wave the hand that they may enter the doors of the nobles. I have commanded my set-apart ones. I have even called my mighty warriors, my proudly exulting ones, to execute my anger. A sound of tumult on the mountains, like that of many people. A sound of the rumbling of kingdoms, of nations gathered together. Yahweh of hosts is mustering that host for battle. They are coming from a far country, from the end of the sky. Yahweh and his instruments of indignation, to wreak destruction on the whole land. Wail, for the day of Yahweh is near. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. Now, I already mentioned the word oracle. Note that this is something that Isaiah saw. And I'm not certain how that worked out. We don't know what Isaiah's experience was. But this was more than just words. He was seeing something. And when you think about what you would see in a military conflict, it may have been a very difficult thing to see. Think about some of the things we're going to hear described. It's easier to read a description than to watch a movie depicting it, right? The commands that God gives Isaiah are this: raise the signal, cry aloud to them, wave the hand to them. These are all saying, get this army coming. Bring this army in that's going to punish Babylon. Then God's commands to the coming army. Now, I hope sometimes by the questions I've asked, especially if you've looked at the handouts, I'm trying to get you to see, how do you read these sections? And there's usually some kind of unit of thought that you can see. The verse is not a unit of thought. Verses are artificial. Chapters are artificial. You've got to read sentences and paragraphs and kind of put it together what's going on. So what are God's commands? I, God, have commanded my set-apart ones. This is kind of the language of set apart for a purpose and a mission. I have even called my mighty warriors, and they have been called to execute my anger. What are the results of God's commands? The sounds of mustering for battle. Yahweh of hosts is mustering the army for battle. Now, host means what? Armies, but we usually think of angelic armies, spiritual beings. So here, Yahweh of hosts is also mustering a physical army, an army that will come against the Babylonian kingdom. They're coming from a far country to wreak destruction on the whole land, in other words, on Babylon. And then take a look at Isaiah 13:6. Wail, for the day of Yahweh is near. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. So the day of Yahweh is a day of judgment. But in this case, a day of judgment within history. It's not at the end of the world. There will be a day of Yahweh then. But this one is within history, and it results in the defeat of Babylon. Let's read 7 through 9. Therefore all hands will fall limp, and every man's heart will melt. They will be terrified. Pains and labor pangs will take hold of them. They will writhe like a woman in labor. They will look at one another in astonishment, their faces aflame. Behold, the day of Yahweh is coming, cruel with fury and burning anger, to make the land a desolation, and he will exterminate its sinners from it. Excuse me. Here we have the reactions of Babylon. And, this is part of this progress of this army coming. And their hands fall limp. What happens when your hands fall limp? You're weak, you're faint. There are probably some other things going on, like being terrified. Their hearts melt. They're terrified. They have pains and labor pains take hold, pains and labor pains, just like a woman in pregnancy. It's not that they're experiencing labor pains, but they're feeling that kind of pain. They're in great distress. They look at one another in astonishment. They can't believe this is happening. Now, Babylon was a mighty kingdom. And I'm sure they felt like, we can never fall. We can never fall. And by the way, you read about Babylon's fall in Daniel 6. They're drinking and having a party, and they think the enemy outside the wall is not any danger to them. What the Medes and the Persians do is divert the river that flowed through Babylon, and then they march through the dry riverbed and basically took the city without too much of a fight. Behold, the day of Yahweh is coming. There's some things I think we need to think about. One, it says cruel. Now, is it because God wants it to be cruel? I think this is one of these things we can kind of think about. God is using an army, and that army does things that I think go beyond what God would want done. He wants punishment, but you let loose an army, especially in the ancient world. I mean, our U.S. forces are well trained. They really try to minimize civilian casualties and all of that. But an ancient army didn't do that. And we'll see even more as we go along. So this day is going to be a cruel day for the people of Babylon. But think a little bit about the difference between Yahweh and the instrument he's chosen. It's wrath and fierce anger, and his purpose is to make the land a desolation, destroy its sinners. 10 through 22. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth their light. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will not shed its light. Thus I will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will also put an end to the pride of the arrogant, and bring low the lofty pride of the ruthless. I will make mortal man scarcer than fine gold, and mankind than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken from its place, at the fury of Yahweh of hosts in the day of his burning anger. And it will be like a hunted gazelle, or like sheep with none to gather them. They will each turn to his own people, and each one flee to his own land. Anyone who is found will be pierced through, and anyone who is captured will fall by the sword. The infants also will be dashed to pieces before their eyes. The houses will be plundered, and their wives ravished. Behold, I'm going to awaken the Medes against them, who will not think about silver or take pleasure in gold, and their bows will dash the young men into pieces. They will not even have a compassion on the fruit of the womb, nor will their eye pity children. And it will be that Babylon, the beauty of kingdoms, the honor of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited or dwelt in from generation to generation, nor will the Arab pitch his tent there, nor will shepherds make their flocks lie down there. But desert creatures will lie down there, and their houses will be full of owls. Ostriches also will dwell there, and shaggy goats will leap there, and hyenas will howl in their fortified towers, and jackals in their luxurious palaces. Her fateful time will soon come, and her days will not be prolonged. First, I want you to notice some figurative language that's common to the prophets. And we have to read this in context to understand it. And the language is this. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not flash forth their light. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will not shed its light. Is this talking about things that really happen in the sky? Okay, dark times. I think this is figurative language, because what is it about? It's about the fall of Babylon. This kind of language is in the prophets multiple times, and in context, it's about the fall of nations. So although, if you read this passage out of context, boy, this sounds like the end of the world. Don't read things out of context. That's my caution to you. Don't read a meme on Facebook and take it at face value. Go back and read the context it occurs in. Maybe it's being used correctly. Maybe it's not. I get frustrated with some of those memes. I think, boy, have you not read further? Would you use it this way? Is it making it sound like it means something it doesn't mean? So although this sounds like end of the world language, it's being used in a context where we know what it's about. It's about the fall of Babylon. And it's being described in these heavenly terms because it's the fall of leaders, kings, rulers. So what is going on literally? And this passage gives us that. And it's kind of important to see. God will punish the wicked for their iniquity. In other words, Babylon's being punished for its sin. God will bring low the pride of the ruthless. Pride is is certainly a prevailing sin that gets mentioned about Babylon and its king. They're also ruthless. You know, the ruthless person just doesn't have any compassion. God will reduce the population through warfare. People are going to die. Armies kill people and break things in order to break the enemy so they cannot wage war against you. And it's messy.
Sounds like what's happening in the desert now.
Right. It is happening today. It does happen today. God will allow captive peoples to return to their own land. That's one of the things Babylon did. It took people captive. And after the defeat of Babylon, they're going to go back. People will die by the sword. Houses will be plundered. Wives ravished. The Medes will not think about silver or take pleasure in gold. I've just put in parentheses what I think that means. They're bent on destruction. They're bent on accomplishing their mission. Infants in the womb and children will be killed. There's no pity. This is where I said, if Isaiah is seeing this, that's a lot different from hearing it, because hearing it is unpleasant, right? Now, this is one of these thought things for us. God knew these things were going to take place in using Babylon, but are all these things God really wanted to have happen? I want you to listen to Isaiah 47, 6 through 7. I was furious with my people. I profaned my inheritance and gave them into your hand. You did not show compassion to them. This is speaking to Babylon. On the aged, you made their yoke very heavy. Yet you said, I will be a queen forever. These things you did not put on your heart, nor remember the outcome of them. This seems to be an explicit passage where God is saying, they went further than I would have wanted them to go. But when you're using a pagan army to punish another pagan nation, things like this happen. Babylon will be overthrown like Sodom and Gomorrah. And what does it mean to be overthrown like Sodom and Gomorrah? You don't exist. Now, this will take some time, but eventually Babylon is not inhabited again. Eventually, what is predicted here does indeed take place. Judgment will be followed. Oh, we're in a new section. I need to read 14:1 through 2. When Yahweh will have compassion on Jacob and again choose Israel and put them in their own land, then sojourners will join them and attach themselves to the house of Jacob, and the peoples will take them along and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel will possess them as an inheritance in the land for their male and female slaves. And they will take their captors captive and will have dominion over their taskmasters. Here we see kind of an interlude. Israel is going to be addressed. And judgment will be followed by compassion to Israel and their restoration to the land. The Gentile sojourners, that is, resident aliens, will join Israel. In other words, they come to the same faith as Israel. Gentiles will aid Israel. and Gentiles will serve Israel. And this, I consider this a reversal of fortunes kind of theme. Having been servants to the Gentiles, Gentiles are now servants to them. And what I think ultimately, this probably was fulfilled in some sense with the captivity, with the return from captivity, but more so with the inclusion of the Gentiles with the gospel. Galatians 3:28 reads, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free man, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." So ultimately, Gentiles get included in all of this, and that's one of the themes within Isaiah. 14:3 through 21. Again, a rather long reading. "And it will be in the day when Yahweh gives you rest from your pain and turmoil and harsh slavery in which you have been enslaved, that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, 'How the taskmaster has ceased, and how fury has ceased. Yahweh has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of rulers, which used to strike the peoples in fury with unceasing strokes, which had dominion over the nations in anger with unrestrained persecution. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into shouts of joy. Even the cypress trees are glad over you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, 'Since you were laid low, no tree cutter comes up against us.' Sheol from beneath trembles excitedly over you to meet you when you come. It wakens for you the spirits of the dead, all the leaders of the earth. It raises all the kings of the nations from their thrones. They will answer and say to you, 'Even you have been made weak as we. You have become like us. Your pride and the music of your harps have been brought down to Sheol. Maggots are spread out as your bed beneath you, and worms are your covering. How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You've been cut down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of the assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will make myself like the Most High. Nevertheless, you will be brought down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit. Those who see you will gaze at you. They will carefully consider you, saying, Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who caused kingdoms to quake, who made the world like a wilderness and pulled down its cities, who did not allow his prisoners to go home? All the kingdoms of the nations lie in glory, each in his own place. But you have been cast out of your grave, like an abhorred branch, clothed with those who killed you, who are pierced with a sword, who go down to the stones of the pit like a trampled corpse. You will not be united with them in burial, because you have ruined your country. You have killed your people. May the seed of evildoers not be called upon forever. Prepare for his sons a place of slaughter because of the iniquity of their fathers. They must not arise and take possession of the earth and fill the face of the world with cities. God gives Israel a timing. When Yahweh gives you rest from your pain, turmoil, and harsh slavery, they will take up a taunt against the king of Israel. Now, the word taunt is probably what you find most of the time in modern translations. Proverb is what you find in the King James and the New King James. The Hebrew word is mashal, and mashal is a wisdom statement. And it's used for proverbs, for parables, and for taunt songs. Now, what would a taunt song be? What did we just listen to? Okay. I like a more verbal expression than that. It's a song that expresses contempt, right? You loser. It's that kind of song. So all these translations, I don't have any problem with any of them. Just recognize what you're listening to. You're listening to a wisdom statement of some sort, but in this particular case, it taunts a good word. It's showing contempt for the king of Babylon. How is the king of Babylon described? And it's interesting to see. He's a taskmaster. Now, if we're using taskmaster probably in the kind of sense it's being used here, it's someone who overworks people, right? Who's oppressive in what he calls upon them to do. He has fury. And woe to you if you have someone who has fury and who has power to go along with it, right? He's wicked. He's striking with unceasing strokes, unceasing blows. Dominion over the nations in anger with unrestrained persecution. Here is power that is abused, right? This is abuse of power. The song will say, you've killed your nation. You've taken it so far that, you just destroyed your own nation. This is abuse of power. What has happened to the king of Babylon? Well, he's described as ceased, broken his staff. Notice how these are building. Entering Sheol. And that means he's dead. Sheol is the word in Hebrew that means the place of the dead. It corresponds in the New Testament Greek to Hades, which is the realm of the dead as well. Now, Hades in our languages come to mean hell as well. We end up with a couple of definitions for it. But this is a way of saying he's died and he's entered the realm of the dead. What is the response of others to his death? I mean, this is a good lesson for us. How will people respond when you die? The world is at rest and at quiet. There are shouts of joy. Do you want people shouting for joy when you die?
For different reasons.
Even the cypress trees are glad because no one's going to come cut them down. Cedar's saying, no tree cutter comes up against us. And then we have the king of Babylon's entrance into Sheol. Sheol's excited. They want to meet him. The dead kings will say, even you have been made weak as we. You have become like us. Now, I don't know whether this kind of dialogue is just dramatic for us as readers or whether it really happens. I'm not certain we can always distinguish those sorts of things.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
The broken staff, would that be like taking our support away?
No, taking his rule away. Staff would be a sign of being a king. I think that got it. The king of Babylon's pride and music brought down, pride again. I want you to notice as we go through this material how much pride gets mentioned. And now, maggots and worms are your bed and covering. This is picturing what it's like with his corpse, where we've seen pictures of what's it like with his spirit. The king of Babylon's arrogant aspirations and fall. We're to a new section, aren't we? Or are we? No. Still same place.
Yeah.
The King James uses the word Lucifer in 14:12. And Lucifer, what does Lucifer mean? Okay, it's a trick question. If someone said devil or Satan, what? Morning star is what it means. Now, when did it come to mean Satan? It doesn't come to mean Satan until after the close of the writing of the Bible. It only occurs in the church fathers. So if we think this means Satan, it doesn't. Because clearly, what is it referring to? The king of Babylon. The king of Babylon. And very heightened language of his arrogant aspirations. The king's arrogance made him want to be like God. Now, can he be? No. Can he declare himself a God? Yeah.
I was reading this. Could it be derisive? You call yourself the morning star.
Oh,
You see yourself as the dawn of the world. And
Yeah.
you are nothing but trash.
yeah, this is a taunt. So yeah, I think that sort of thing is going on. He's had these aspirations that are just as arrogant as you can get. He wants to be like God. It doesn't get worse than that. So you have this mocking, sarcastic tone of how you've fallen from heaven. You have fallen greatly. The kings of the nations lie in glory, but the king of Babylon remains unburied. Now that is, this would be unthinkable in some ways. This is a great dishonor to be unburied. And then they call to kill his son so they do not take his place. And I ask the question, is that just? Well, I'll remind you of Deuteronomy 24:16. Fathers shall not be put to death for their sons, nor shall sons be put to death for their fathers. Each shall be put to death for his own sin. But their father's behavior has led the people to want to be rid of them. They don't want to take a risk. So I want you to notice, there are things we can look at that happen that are not necessarily moral things that happen, but they're the kinds of things that happen in history. And they're certainly the kinds of things that happen when you let loose one foreign army against another, especially in the ancient world. Verses 22 through 23 says, I will rise up against them, declares Yahweh of hosts, and will cut off from Babylon name and remnant, offspring and posterity, declares Yahweh. I will also make it the possession for the hedgehog and the swamps of water, and I will sweep it from the broom of destruction. I will sweep it with the broom of destruction, declares Yahweh of hosts. Okay, to chapter 21. Beginning in verse 1. And this is because I wanted to bring everything about Babylon together in one place. The oracle concerning the wilderness of the sea. As whirlwinds in the Negev sweep on, it comes from the wilderness, from a fearsome land. A harsh vision has been declared to me. The treacherous one still deals treacherously, and the destroyer still destroys. Go up, Elam, lay siege. Media, I have made an end of all the groaning she has caused. For this reason my loins are full of anguish. Pains have seized me like the pains of a woman in labor. I am so bewildered, I cannot hear, so terrified, I cannot see. My heart reels, horror terrorizes me. The twilight I longed for has been turned for me into trembling. They set the table, they spread out the cloth, they eat, they drink. Rise up, commanders, oil the shields. For thus the Lord says to me, go station the lookout, the watchman. Let him declare what he sees. Indeed, he shall see riders, horsemen in pairs, riders of donkeys, riders of camels. So let him pay close attention, very close attention. Then the lookout called, O Lord, I stand continually by day on the watchtower, and I'm stationed every night at my guard post. And behold, here comes a troop of riders, horsemen in pairs. And one answered and said, and this is the key line, obviously, fallen, fallen is Babylon, and all the graven images of her gods are shattered on the ground. O my trampled people and my afflicted of the threshing floor, what I have heard from Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, I have declared to you. Now,
That's Isaiah talking, right?
what?
That was Isaiah.
Yeah, that's Isaiah speaking. Yes, it's important to ask who's speaking in the prophets. This oracle phrase is vague. You know, it's not like the oracle of Babylon or the oracle of Tyre. It's a much vaguer sort of phrase. Let me go back to it. The oracle of the wilderness of the sea. But as you read the section, what is the oracle about? What is it about?
It's about how Isaiah feels.
Okay, the key word there is Babylon. It's an oracle about Babylon. Now, this wilderness, the sea, can be linked with a region where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers enter into the sea at the Persian Gulf. You can find this in commentaries and study Bibles, so you can get some sort of sense about it. But ultimately, just reading the section, you see it's about Babylon, and that's what's important. Commentators are going to debate what the historical background is, and I'll just give you that. I'm not going to settle it. Is this the fall of Babylon in 689 by Assyria, or is this the fall of Babylon in 539 by the Medes and Persians? And commentators are going to divide on it. And
Yeah, it says that it's not gonna be any more after that, so wouldn't it have to be the last one?
even with the last one, Babylon doesn't quite disappear immediately. It disappears ultimately. So you can make the same criticism on either date. So what is Isaiah's response? He says it's a harsh vision. His loins are full of anguish, pains like labor pains, heart reels, horror terrorizes me. The twilight I long for has been turned for me into trembling. So that's caused commentators to ask, why is Isaiah having this response? If it's the earlier historical situation, Babylon might be at that time an ally of Israel, and that might be the response. Or it just may be you take a sensitive person and have him see the downfall of a nation, that they are going to feel some horror, even when that nation is the persecutor of your own people. So I'm not certain how we rate it. We just, we're reading the text and we're seeing, how does Isaiah respond to all this? Go up, Elam, lay siege. And in my question, I consider this the enemies of Babylon, but some would say it's unclear. If it's the earlier historical date, they may be allies of Babylon going up against Assyria. Or if it's the later date, Elam has to be understood as Persia, same region, just different name. It was the Medes and Persians who overcame Babylon in 539. What does God instruct Isaiah to do? Well, go station the lookout, go station the watchman. Let him declare what he sees. And what does the lookout call out? Ultimately, he's going to call out that he sees troops. Now, a lookout would see lots of animals, beasts of burden, people riding animals, going through doing, being merchants. But ultimately, he sees troops coming. And then ultimately is the phrase, fallen, fallen is Babylon. By the way, that phrase occurs in Revelation 14:8 and 18:2. We've done a study of Revelation recently. You know that was, I think, about the Roman Empire. But using language, Babylon and Rome are connected, aren't they? They're connected in the vision Nebuchadnezzar saw of the image of gold and silver and bronze and iron mixed with clay. So it was a fitting image. But here we have the destruction of a pagan empire. And then the last address. Oh, my trampled people and my afflicted of the threshing floor. I think this is a reference to Israel. What I have heard from Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, I've declared to you. Now, I think the kind of lessons we see in this section, and you can look at the other nations as well, is God is in control of history. And it doesn't always feel that way to us, does it? And yet God ultimately is. God has a standard of morality that he applies to all people. And we're living in an age where people think all morality is relative. But God has a standard, and that standard is based on God's own character. God judges nations in history, and that's an uncomfortable thought for us as human beings, maybe. And I've already said we don't have prophets to tell us this is that. But certainly the fact that he does it in the Old Testament would seem to me to indicate he just does it.
Well, he says he puts people in power that he wants in power.
Yeah. God's justice and mercy ultimately win, and God's people are victorious. And those are important things to take away as you read a section like this. Next week, we're going to be looking at chapters 24 through 27 that I've borrowed the Bible Project's title, A Tale of Two Cities. And there are some important things in this section. There really are. And we're making our way through Isaiah. Next week will be February, which means, we only have 4 more classes to do, I think. There might be 5, but 4 or 5. So we're winding our way down. So thank you for being here. I'll have a handout sheet posted sometime by midweek. Thank you very much.